Good morning, beautiful people. I am excited to share this new video with you. Today we're going to be doing some pressure canning. This will be my first video teaching you guys how to do some pressure canning, and I wanted to pick something that's relatively easy to start with, although I will say it's messy. All right, so what I have here is a couple of chickens that we're going to break down. So I do this because I used to go to the store and buy the canned chicken, right? It's a great little shortcut. It's better than having to cook up a whole chicken when all I want to do is have a little bit of chicken to maybe go in a soup or a stew, or sometimes I'll use it on nachos or to make fajitas. And it's way better as well than going into the frozen section and finding the frozen, bags of fajita style meat, which honestly, I'm not sure that's all 100% meat. So it's a little scary on that. So I really like to do this. I also will, when I break it down, I take all of the byproduct that isn't meat and I put it in my Instapot, and I will make really beautiful chicken broth out of it. So I don't waste anything when I do this, and it ends up being very, very inexpensive. So what I do is I have a membership at Sam's Club. So whether you have a Sam's Club membership, a Costco membership, or some other big box bulk type, membership, I'm sure they all have very similar things. But at Sam's, they sell these really nice rotisserie chickens. And they actually sell them for less than $5. It's insane. I couldn't buy the chicken and roast it and all of this for that price. So that is what I do. I go to Sam's, I look for their chickens, and I typically get 4 of them at a time because, again, I'm going to pressure can. So whenever I pressure can, I want to make sure that I'm utilizing the energy that it takes to do that by filling the pressure canner. So like I said, I'll get 4. And I will take that chicken and break it down. Now, I do use latex gloves when I do this because the chicken's greasy. Like I said, it's messy, and I don't want to get all that grease and whatnot under my fingernails and in my ring and all that. So I wear latex gloves. Highly recommend them. Makes cleanup a whole lot easier, and again, you're not getting all kinds of yucky stuff underneath your nails. So supplies. I have my Instapot. Of course, I've got my pressure canner on the stove, which I'll get going when I get closer to using that. I have a cookie sheet that I will show you here in just a second that I'm going to divide and break everything up on. And then typically what I'll do is I will put the meat in pint-sized jars, although I do have some of these odd, tall jelly jars. So I'm going to put some in these too because I'm not really sure what else I'd use it for. And it's kind of the perfect size for me and Todd when I want to grab a jar of chicken and use it for something. Now, when I break down the chicken, I break it down and I do separate it by dark meat and white meat. And the reason that I do that is because the white meat, I would pull that out and use that for something like putting it on a salad, or making chicken tacos or fajitas or nachos or something like that, where I'm not going to cook it, or I'm not going to cook it very long, right? So that's perfect for the white meat. Now the dark meat, I will pull that out and I'll put that in something that I'm going to, stew or cook for a while. And I want that fat that's in the dark meat to kind of render out and flavor whatever it is that I'm cooking. So maybe something like white chicken chili, or my chicken noodle soup, or my chicken and wild rice. I will use the dark meat in that because, again, as I'm cooking that for a couple of hours, the fat that's in that dark meat is going to render out, and it's just going to help to flavor that super stew that I'm making. So like I said, I do have my cookie sheet here, and I already broke down one chicken. And for one chicken, this is what I got. I got all of this beautiful white meat, and I got all of this beautiful dark meat. And I do have it separated, like I said. And so I did also, when I broke that down, I took anything that wasn't meat and I put that in my Instapot. All the bones, all the skin, all the fat, any of the gristle, I also put the gelated broth that was in the bottom of the container in here. So when I get started, we have our little chicken here, and I'm going to pull this out. Now, it's a little bit easier, I think, to do this while it's still warm and I first bring it home from Sam's. But I didn't do that. Well, I did the first two, and then I put the other two in the refrigerator. So now we got to do these two. So now that this is cold, all of that broth that is in here, like I said, is gelated. So I'm just going to kind of get that off because I don't want to waste that. I mean, that's chicken broth, right? And that's what we're trying to make. So I'm going to scrape all of that off, or at least most of it, so I can kind of start working with the rest of this chicken. And then if you see here in the bottom of this pan, it does, you know, when you bring it home, it's going to have all this beautiful broth right here. And again, that's what we're trying to make, right? So this we're not going to waste. We're going to get this right into the Instapot. I try very hard, no matter what it is that I am doing, to never waste anything. If the Lord's going to provide, I'm going to make sure I use every ounce of what He's provided to me. So to get started, the chicken is going to have this little string around here that kind of holds it together. We're going to want to remove that. It's a little bit easier to remove when it's warm, but this is not warm, so it's a little bit trickier. But we will get this removed, and it is wrapped around the leg quite a bit here. All right. So once we have this removed, I actually break the chicken down into quarters. Again, I'm going to separate the meat by dark and white. So when I separate it into quarters, I'm doing the same thing. I'm going to have my white meat, my dark meat separated out, so that way I can work with it and keep it separated like I want. So that right there is the only garbage that we are going to have, the container and the string. That's it. Everything else we're going to utilize. So we're going to start out by, like I said, breaking this into quarters, and it's pretty easy to do. You're just going to grab the hindquarters here and just kind of bend those out. There's a dark section. There is a dark section. So we're going to lay that aside. We're going to work with the white meat first, is just where I start. We're going to start pulling off that skin. Pick this up so you can see it a little bit better, and it peels off pretty easily. The skin is great for the broth because it's been, you know, roasted. It's got some seasoning on it, so it's really going to give our broth a really, really, really nice flavor. So make sure you don't waste anything, not even the skin. So then once we get that all peeled off, it's pretty easy to just start breaking down from there. You're just gonna, again, keep pulling things apart. You're gonna peel as much meat off of those bones as you possibly can. Don't be shy. And anything that isn't meat, you're gonna go ahead and throw that in the Instapot and make sure that we can utilize that for the broth. So now that I have this first chicken broke down, we will go ahead and get that into the jars so we can work towards getting that in the pressure canner. So to do that, like I said, I'm gonna go ahead and do this for white meat and dark meat and separate that. My hands are greasy, so I just went like that. Make sure that you sterilize your jars, your rims, and your lids before you fill them. I've already done that, so make sure that you boil them. I happen to be fortunate enough to have a dishwasher with a sanitize button, so I run mine through the dishwasher to sterilize them. It works really, really well. So make sure you sterilize those jars. Do not skip this step. Very, very important. So once we've got our chicken broke down, we're gonna go ahead and start filling our jars. And once we get those filled, we will go ahead and get them filled as well with water. So make sure that as you are filling your jars, that you are setting them down and then double checking them. As you fill them, the water is just obviously gonna filter down, and you don't want your chicken dry when you pressure can it. It'll shrivel up and dry in the can, and it's not very visually appealing or probably quite as tasty once it's been pressure canned and all dried out. So make sure that you check how much water is in the jar before you put the lid on, and just make sure that it's, you know, right up to what I would call the shoulders of the jar, which is kind of like just below the rim right there. So you can, as you're loading your jars, feel free to pack your chicken in there. I do see that this jar right here is just a bit dry, so I'm going to add a little bit more water. And I did, like I said, I did pack my jars to make sure that they were nice and full. I don't want to waste any space in the jars or in the canner as I'm running them. So once you get your jars full, chicken water, like I said, you can add a teaspoon of salt or a quarter teaspoon, whatever your heart desires. It's not necessary, and I don't add salt at our age. My husband and I, we're trying to watch our salt and sugar intake. So, and then I figure, you know, you're going to add salt anyways as you're cooking. So I don't salt it. You can. It's up to you. And then once we get to this point, make sure you wipe your rims, and then go ahead and put your lid and your rim on all the jars. Hand tight. Okay, don't over tighten, don't under tighten, just hand tight. You don't have to be He-Man or anything like that. So go ahead and get all of your lids and rims on your jars. Now, back to the chicken broth. We do have a full pot of skin, bones, gristle, fat, anything that we didn't want to go in the jar went into the pot here. So this is 2 chickens worth. And what I'm going to do now is add water to it. How much water you add is completely up to you. It's just gonna determine how rich, I guess, your broth turns out. I add 2 cups per chicken. 4 cups per chicken. So I have 8 cups of water here that I'm gonna go ahead and put into the Instapot. Oops, I spilled some. And then once I get this all filled up with water, that's it. We are going to let the Instapot work its magic from there. So I'll go ahead and seal this, and I will set this to pressure cook high for 60 minutes and let it go. So then that's going to go ahead and do its thing while we finish with the chicken here. So out of 2 chickens, I told you I used these weird tall jelly jars. I didn't know what I was going to use them for. So I put all the white meat in these jars, and I ended up with 7 of these, 7 jars of white meat. And then I put the dark meat in the pint-sized jars because I didn't have any more of these, and this is what I normally have to put the chicken in. Anyways, we ended up with 3 pints of dark meat. So that's for 2 chickens. 2 chickens, we got 3 pints of dark meat. We got 7 tall jelly jars. It's pretty close to a pint of white meat. So now that we'll go ahead and, like I said, get all of your rims wiped, get your lids, and that all on there. But I wanted to talk about the pressure cooker, right? This is the part that scares everybody. This is the reason why most people do not can, is because they're just afraid that their pressure cooker is going to explode. I was the same way, and I will tell you that things are much different now. It's not like when our moms and grandmas and that were all canning, pressure canning, and they had these, you know, pressure cookers that weren't as nice as they are today, right? So I did a lot of research. Again, I was nervous to pressure cook. I didn't want something exploding. So I did a lot of research, and I found that this particular pan or pot is very beginner friendly. Now you can get really nice pots. Someday I hope to have an all-American. Those are quite expensive, but they are very, very nice. Now, they're not very beginner friendly though, because what you end up with is this little, they call it a tickler. And you've got this little valve that comes out where the steam comes through, and the tickler is like a weight. And you adjust the weight based on the pounds of pressure, and it's just a little bit more complicated. So this pot, in all of my research, is one of the most beginner-friendly pressure cookers out there. Now, you may find something different, but this is what I found. So this is a T-Fail, T-F-A-L, and the reason that I like it is because on the lid, where all the magic happens, It's got this really nice dial here that makes it very easy to see how many pounds of pressure I want to dial it for. The 1 is for 10 pounds, 2 is for 20 pounds, and 3 is for 30 pounds. And then you also have your steam release valve. So to use that, I mean, you're literally just flipping it around. And there's a little indicator on here that shows you where you're at. So for any type of meat, I'm always going to can that at 20 pounds of pressure. So I want to make sure that this dial is on 2, which right now, there's my little indicator dot. Right now it's on 1, and now it's on 2. So I know that this is on 20 pounds of pressure. I'm going to load all of my jars in here. Now, you are going to want to make sure that you do not overfill it. So this pot has water in it. It's a little bit heavy. But if you see here and look really close, there's an indicator line here and there's an indicator line here. I typically fill it to this indicator line here if I'm doing large quart-sized jars because then that volume is going to make the water level rise up to here, right? If I'm doing just a small batch with these little jars, then I'll go ahead and fill it a little more full. You don't want to overfill your pressure cooker, right? So never allow the water, I try not to ever let the water kind of go any higher than in between the top and this mark. So right about here. Now you're gonna put your water in your pot. Mine comes with this really nice little buffer plate, I guess. And you're going to want to make sure you use this because you don't want your jars to come into contact with the bottom of the pot. So make sure that you do have that in there. Regardless of what pressure cooker you have, it should have one of those buffer plates in there. Now, if you're going to do a second layer, there is another buffer plate that you can use in between the jars, so those don't touch and you don't run a chance of breaking any jars. Once you have your water in here, you're going to want to add about, I would say 4 tablespoons of vinegar. The vinegar is going to help because once the pressure builds and everything kind of happens in the pot, you can end up with black in the pot where the water was over time, and the vinegar just helps to kind of keep that from happening. It's still going to happen as much as I use mine. You saw on my plate here, it does have some of that black. It's totally fine, doesn't affect anything. The vinegar just helps to kind of keep that from happening so much and so quickly. So if you want to just keep it looking pristine and looking nice, make sure you put your vinegar in there. Once you have your vinegar in here and you have your pressure, your pounds of pressure set, you're gonna go ahead and put this on here. You'll be able to tell, it'll kind of drop into place. I don't know if you saw that, but you can't just, like, it's not gonna go into place until it's in just the right spot, which is right here. Once you get here, you just rotate it and it locks. It's super easy. It's super nice. This thing will not explode, trust me. It won't come off. It's great. Now, the other thing that I really like about this pot is this little dial here. This replaces that tickler with the weight that I was telling you about. This is just a very easy to read gauge. I don't have to worry about a tickler. I can see very easy on this gauge how many pounds this pressure cooker is at. So the 1 range obviously is for 10 pounds, the 2 range is for 20, and the 3 is for 30. And then you've got this little, I don't know if you can see it, hopefully you can, this little red section past the 3. You don't want it to get there. It's not going to explode, but it's showing you that don't ever exceed that because it's going to be far too much pressure inside of your pot, and it could damage what's inside the pot. So once your little indicator arm here gets to where you want it to be, you want it to stay in the green area for that number. So again, we're doing our meat at 20 pounds pressure. So we want to make sure that as we are processing this, our little indicator arm here stays within the green range of the 2. Make sense? So to do that, I'm gonna have to keep an eye on this. It's not just turn it up on high and let her rip for 90 minutes. You do need to keep an eye on it. So I'll typically find something else to work on in the kitchen so I can keep an eye on it while it's pressure cooking. So you're just gonna adjust your dial on your stove, your knob on your stove, to keep it in the range. So I will put mine on high, my stove burner on high, until I get this indicator arm into the green range of the pressure that I'm cooking at. Once I get the indicator arm into that green area, I can usually turn my burner down to low and it'll maintain that. Sometimes I have to turn it up just a little bit past low, maybe because it starts to fall down a little bit, just to kind of keep it again in that green range for where we're wanting to keep it. But pretty much, once you get it in that range, you can turn your burner down to low. Now, it doesn't matter where it's at, as long as it's in the green. It doesn't have to be perfectly in the middle. It doesn't have to be at the top of the green. Doesn't matter if it's at the bottom of the green, just so it's in the green range for the pounds that we're wanting to pressure cook. So meat, I'm going to, again, cook at 20 pounds of pressure, or not cook, but pressure cook, at 20 pounds of pressure for 60 minutes. And you don't start your 60 minutes until it gets in the range, right? So we could turn this thing on and it may take 30 minutes before it gets into the green range of the two. Our 60 minutes does not start until it's in that green range. So it could actually be cooking for a full 90 minutes before it's done. So once it gets into the green range of the two, that is when we can start our 60 minutes. Now, when we hit that 60 minutes, that it's been pressure cooking, it's been in the range of the two for 60 minutes, we can turn our burner off, and I typically will do a quick release. So to quick release, you just turn this knob to the steam indicator here. So you just turn it to there, and it lets all that steam out, and you will not be able to turn this lid until the steam and the pressure inside has been released. As that steam is releasing, you will see the indicator arm on this gauge start to fall. And once it gets all the way down to the bottom where there is no pressure inside of this pot, that is when we will be able to turn our lid and see how all of our stuff turned out inside. So once the pressure is all released, we can turn the lid. I will caution you, be very careful when you remove the lid, because the water inside of the pot is extremely hot, and the water will condensate on the inside of this lid. So when you turn it and you take it off, if you go like this, that hot water is going to drip down onto your legs, and it's going to burn. It's not going to feel good. It's going to burn. So when I remove my lid, I typically kind of stand back. I pull it straight up, and then my sink is lateral straight over from my stove. So I'll just keep it out like this, and I walk it straight from the stove over to the sink, and I'll sit it somewhere so it doesn't burn me. So be very much aware of that. Once the lid is off, I will leave the jar sit for about another 15 to 30 minutes, because you'll see that everything within the pot, when you remove the lid, is still boiling. So you want to kind of let things cool off a little bit within the pot before you actually go to remove them. Once things have cooled down for about 15 to 30 minutes and you're ready to remove them, you will want to make sure, obviously, that you're using your little jar remover and you are picking those jars up out of here. And what I also do is I will take a towel, because again, it's going to be very, very hot. You do not want to drip any water on your legs or anything else that it may hurt, right? So when I remove those jars, I will have my towel ready, and I remove them very slowly, right? There's been a lot of pressure, a lot of extreme heat, and now you're pulling them out into what could be much, much cooler air. That's why we've let it cool down for about 15 to 30 minutes so they're not quite, boiling hot. So when I pull that out, again, I make sure I step back. I'm not, right on top of it. So step back. When you pull that out, you're gonna just slide your towel right underneath our imaginary jar. Here, I'll grab a jar. So you're going to, pull that out, and you're gonna put your towel right underneath that jar as soon as you pull it out. And then again, I have a very short distance between my stove to my countertop. And so I'm gonna move them right on over, and I'm gonna put them down. Now, I do not place these directly on my countertop. Again, because what if my countertop is very cool? I've got air conditioning going in the house. That is a very big temperature difference between how hot that jar is and how cool your countertop is. I will typically use either, a lot of times I'll use my metal cookie sheet, and then I've just got it covered with a towel. So there's a buffer between this and the jar, and that towel kind of has a neutral temperature, so there's not that contact with something that's much different. Or I have several wooden cutting boards that work very nicely for putting my jars on. So I'll line those up on the counter, and I will place those jars on the wooden cutting boards or the metal pans that have a towel on it. So that's very important as well. That's going to make sure that those very hot jars come into contact with something that is a neutral temperature, and help to prevent that extreme temperature exchange between the jar and the surface, which could cause it to crack and explode. So those are kind of the things that I watch out for when I'm pressure canning. I know that's a lot of information, so feel free to rewind the video and watch it again. All very, very, very important safety tips when you are using a pressure cooker. So I would say it's not the pressure cooker exploding that you have to worry about. It's making sure that you are staying safe from the extremely hot water. You don't want to burn yourself. And making sure that you are safely cooling those jars for 15 to 30 minutes before removing them, and then safely moving the jars from your pressure cooker to a neutral temperature surface, so that way, again, you're not burning yourself. And the other thing too that I would say is, by having your towel, I have had this happen. I had a jar that I removed from the pressure canner, and I had my towel, and as I was transferring it over, it actually it exploded. And that can happen if you have a jar that maybe has like a hairline fracture in it or something like that. So always be certain to visually inspect your jars, your rims, and your lids before pressure canning. I've mentioned this in other videos. If I have generic jars, I will use those for water bathing. If I have generic lids, I'll use those for water bathing. Not such a big deal. When I'm pressure canning, I always make sure to use the best equipment, right? So I've got my Ball mason jars, Atlas, Kerr, those are all really good brands. Same thing for the lids. If I am pressure canning, I'm always using my Ball brand lids. I will never use something that is generic or no name, or not one of those very reputable brands when it comes to your jars. So that's another very important tip. If you're pressure canning, use your good stuff. Save the generic stuff or the less expensive stuff for water bathing, because it's not so hard on your jars. Pressure canning is. There's a lot of pressure in there. So make sure that you're using your good, Ball jars, Kerr jars, etc. Don't use the Anchor Hocking. There's nothing wrong with those. Just use those for water bathing. So that's pretty much it when it comes to pressure cooking and making sure that you are safe. Let me go ahead and get this process started for myself here, along with allowing our broth to cook down, and then we will put this all together. So our pressure cooker has been going for an hour now, and it's done. And I wish I could show you all just how beautiful this looks, but it's difficult without spilling it. So I want to just show you what the next step is. We have all this wonderful chicken broth, but we also have all the bits and pieces that we put in there, right? So I have this awesome little strainer spoon. It's actually a really nice size. And it's perfect for just kind of scooping out the stuff that we don't want to go in the jar with our broth. And then I've also got a bowl here that I'm gonna dump it into, and then I'll let it cool before I throw it away because I don't want to melt the garbage bag, obviously, right? So, so I'll get all this stuff strained out, and then we'll be able to get it in jars. Okay, so this is the result of taking all of those scraps that we would have otherwise just thrown away and putting them in the Instapot for an hour with 8 cups of water. So, I mean, you can see the color in that and how awesome that turned out. I got 3 quarts of broth from 2 chickens. And then if you remember, we got 6 of these tall jelly jars, I'm going to call them pints, of white meat, and we got 3 pint jars of dark meat, all out of 2 chickens, and for what? I mean, less than $10. So this is a great way to save money. It's a great way to get some more shelf-stable items in your pantry and just, you know, utilize what you have without wasting things that you might otherwise throw away. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please hit the like button and don't forget to hit subscribe so you're aware when I post new videos. But I appreciate all of you for, you know, watching this content. And until next time, happy canning.